we've had a beautiful introduction with drama to this evening, perhaps we could just focus our thoughts together and just have a minute of silence together. Thank you. Not only was there a lovely introduction through drama, but the image that you have in front of you is also one of being able to be free and fly, a situation where there was a tightness and a bondage, and then a liberation and being set free. Because this is what letting go means. It means to be free myself and to allow others the possibility and the opportunity for freedom also. There's a poster that is up on our center in the hall in London, and it says, if you love someone, then let them go. And if they truly love you, they'll come back to you. And if they don't, then it's because they really belong to you anyway. It sums it up, doesn't it? That if there's a bond that is a pure one, a subtle one, then it's not one that is restrictive. There's a beautiful relationship that's there, but not any sense of bondage. And if there is any bondage, then it's not healthy, either for yourself or for another. And within the little poem that was recited as the drama was taking place, every single line was a gem. And I'm sure you picked up various jewels from that and you've taken them and kept them with yourself. But I'd been thinking about one thing very specifically, and when that came up within the poem, it caught my attention instantly. And that was the aspect of desires. Living within a very materialistic world, and in a world that's educated by television, perhaps more so than anything else. If we were to ask ourselves what is the greatest influence on our way of thinking, and more, the younger the audience, the people in the audience may be, the greater that influence has been. I'll date myself and tell you my own reflections. And in the 60s, when I was growing up, television in Britain was restricted to just a few hours a day. You didn't have daytime television, you just had basically afternoon and evening television. And every child, all my peers, all of us had a specific number of hours that we were allowed to watch television. And in the 70s and 80s, certainly in the 80s, now I see that nobody, no parent is able to impose any restriction on the number of hours of television, just out of question. And even in Britain, it's just day and night television now, maybe not through the night, but certainly starting early morning. And so the exposure that there is from the early morning through until late night, a lot of our conscious waking hours comes from all the influences outside. And if I think about the two major influences that come through television, for instance, or generally the advertising industry, it's sex or violence, these two factors, and in a very general way again, what all this is doing is just stimulating further desires, further acquisitions, tendencies for material things, material expressions. And what does that leave within myself? What is the impact that it has on me? If I'm in a state in which I'm constantly wanting this, wanting that, wanting the other. And that's what happens when desires begin. Try chasing a horse, and who's going to get tired? Don't know whether you've ever tried it, but try it someday and probably you'll be exhausted and the horse will have gone flying on. And that's a little bit what happens with the human mind when it's chasing desires. The desires just keep moving ahead further and further and faster, and you keep following them, trying to catch up with them, and it's not actually ever going to be possible. Think about the desires you had when you were 12 years old. And at that time, perhaps you thought that, well, I don't know what 12-year-olds want anymore, but maybe a bicycle. At the age of 12, you think that a bicycle is all that you want, and that's going to fulfill all your desires. And you get the bicycle, but for a few months, maybe a few years, if you're lucky, there's a tremendous satisfaction. But then there's another desire, and that's 2 wheels isn't enough, 4 wheels is important. And you get the 4 wheels, but that's not important. It now has to be a machine that's bigger and brighter and better than my neighbor, and then it has to be 2 machines, and so on and so on. And so that's the story with desires. And so the very first thing, it seems that if I can let go of desires, then my life can be much, much more content, much, much happier. It's funny because we think that if a desire is fulfilled, that's going to bring happiness. That's been our way of thinking for quite a while now. We always think that if you fulfill every thought that comes, every desire that comes, that's going to bring fulfillment. And that's been the policy of the permissive society for the last 30 years or so. Don't restrain yourself. Anything that comes into your mind, follow it through. And the result of that hasn't been quite what we anticipated. We thought fulfilling every desire would mean happiness. And the problem is that my mind doesn't actually know what it really wants. If it did, it would be easy, but it doesn't. And so one day I want one thing, another day I want something else. And in the chase of fulfilling all of that, I found that I've caught myself up in knots. And maybe there's another way of looking at it. Maybe instead of looking outwards and hoping that external things are going to bring me satisfaction, perhaps there's another method I can start using. I'll suggest one. It's one that I've worked with and it works very successfully. Go inwards, because the creation of desires is happening inside. The stimulus is coming from outside, but it's not those things that are actually creating my desire. My desires are coming from within my own being. And what I can do is, instead of seeking the fulfillment outside, I can seek a fulfillment that's inside. And I'm able to find a state of contentment just by turning inwards. It's like if there's a seed, when you have the seed, it's got everything contained within itself. It's compact, it's powerful, it's potent, it's got everything within. And as soon as it starts using its energy and it starts sprouting outwards, the seed begins to shrivel, and within a short space of time, it's finished. And I love trees, and the analogy is only for a very limited purpose of use at this point. But that's actually what's happened. The thoughts that I create and the manifestations of those thoughts are taking away the energy from inside of my own being, the seed of the being that I am. And so the more I extend myself, the more I expand outwards, the less powerful I am, the more I use my energy, and we have no method, or generally we don't have a method of being able to replace energy to be able to fill ourselves again. I don't know whether sometimes at the end of the day, or sometimes perhaps even at the beginning of the day, when you first wake up, there's a feeling of being drained, being empty. At the end of the day, okay, I understand, we've been working hard, and so there's a feeling that there's been a lot that's been given out and nothing that's come back in to replace it. But the situation is such that even at the beginning of the day, as soon as a person wakes, there isn't usually that wonderful greeting of, hello, good morning life, here I am, a beautiful new start to the day. How often does that happen out of 365 days of the year? Probably not even Christmas. Even Christmas probably begins with just a hangover. And so the joy of life and the beauty of life, that seems to have gone very, very far away. And to begin the day with a sense of emptiness, what's going to happen to the rest of my day? Not a very happy start, is it? And so what am I going to do about it? I found that it works looking at it from this particular analogy of myself being the seed and being able to fill myself, prepare myself, and then expressing myself, coming out from within myself, but only in that which is completely positive. That's the other aspect. Not only that we've drained the seed and not known how to recharge it, but also the things in which we've extended ourselves have been so negative, and so the feedback of that has been further negativity also, and the state of suffering that seems to be very much a part of human nature today. Human nature should be filled with happiness and love. That's our natural state. I believe that absolutely. This is what we want. This is what each one of us seeks, and I believe that it's possible. You see, if you've tasted something ever, even once in your life, you know what it's like and you want it again. And the fact that today human beings want to have peace and love and happiness is indicating to me that we've had these qualities. They've been part of our experience in a natural way, and then something happened to deprive them, but we can get them back again. It's possible for that to happen again. It's not an impossible dream, but I think it's very much part of our process of growing up and learning and coming to make those real again in our lives. And so firstly, just to be able to deal with desires and not allow desires to rule me, because that's what happens. In a world that so much talks about freedom, if you think about one of the key words of the 20th century, or even the last half of the 20th century, perhaps the banner of freedom would be the one that would take everybody's hearts. And yet in that world of freedom, or in a world in which we place so much emphasis on freedom, we tie ourselves up in bondages, firstly just simply through an amazing number of desires. And to replace that by turning inwards and finding my own inner state of contentment and peace, I'll find that the things that I was chasing aren't so valuable after all. If I'm still chasing them, and even if somebody tries to explain to me, they're not useful for you, what purpose do they have? My intellect is so caught up with them that I'm not even able to listen. And it's not a new state of affairs, actually. I'm remembering a very ancient story that's told in India, and you may have heard of it because it's been put across in theatre in different ways. It's the story of the Ramayana. and the classic story is of the battle of good and evil. But one particular incident, which is a very crucial incident within that, is the situation where Sita, this young princess who has been willing to renounce her palace, her husband's kingdom, her parents' kingdom, and come into the jungle and experience exile and banishment for 14 years. She's been through all of that and is coming to the end of the time of banishment. It's time nearly to go back to their kingdom. And yet what happens is that in the jungle she sees a golden deer, and she wants the golden deer. Now she is completely besotted by this golden deer. She wants nothing else. She wants this. And Rama, her husband, tells her, but what are you going to do with it? You know, we're going back home. It's not going to want to live in the city. It's going to be unhappy. Let go. Why do you want it? It serves no purpose for you. But the mind has been pulled so strongly that that's what I want. Doesn't matter whether it's useful or not useful, but that's what I want. And that was the start of a whole story that became a thick volume of the trials and tribulations of what happened further. But this is the state of human beings now, where the mind gets pulled and there's no purpose, no rhyme, no reason, and yet we want. And only when it's not possible at that time when I want something to try and replace it or to talk to myself or have anyone else talk to me, but it's a process that one builds up at a time when it's not necessarily a time of struggle or battle, which means I begin now, I begin today, and I start going inwards and I start feeling that essence of contentment within my own being. And then I'm in a situation where I can observe my mind being pulled and I can gently pull it back again. And it won't cause havoc, it won't cause distress. And so firstly, just knowing myself and knowing how to deal with my own desires is something that I feel is the very starting point of being able to let go and free ourselves from bondages. There was a project that we've been running for the last couple of years, and you heard a little bit about various projects, but this one, Global Cooperation, and we were asking people for their ideas and visions of a better world. And just in the month of August, I was part of a team in which we were going through all the materials. And imagine it's been materials from 119 countries, and it's taken in horizontal levels of communication as well as vertical, so it's covered grassroots in every country, but also the leaders of society and professionals and so on. And there was a very interesting statement that I read from Africa, and it's quite possible that it was first written somewhere else, but I read it in the vision that had come from Africa, and it was particularly touching because it was from that continent. And what this particular vision paper said was, can we not live simply so that others can simply live? It puts it well, doesn't it? But that's what it means. It means not only my personal freedom if I'm willing to let go, it also means equality, humanity, and civilization for the future in the world. It's not possible for us to carry on in the lifestyle that we have been the last 100 years or so. That's a fact. When I started on a spiritual path and I heard these things about desires and simplicity and contentment as the other side of the spectrum of materialism, I knew that it was satisfying what I needed on a very personal, deep level, because I could feel that, yes, I had to go inside to be content. It wasn't going to be possible to find that contentment outside. But a very interesting situation is that in today's world, it's not only a spiritual truth, It's a truth for survival of humanity. If 20% of the world's humanity is consuming 80% of the world's resources, and that's not a figure out of my imagination, that's a reality. If this is the situation, and the cause of it is our desires and the multiplication of our desires, it means that we've come up against a wall. It's not possible for the world to survive in its present condition. And it's not politicians or the UN even, or the governments, or even international agencies, whether it's the Red Cross or anyone, who can rectify the situation. Because survival of the world in the future depends on you and me. It depends on each and every one of us and our personal attitude and our own transformation. And so letting go means letting live. We're talking about the future of humanity now, not just a spiritual idea that's a luxury for some few who prefer to spend time sitting in corners meditating. But I see that it's something that has to be a conscious policy that we adopt through our hearts. Another aspect of letting go, just firstly in terms of how I'm able to deal with it just within my own being, because I was seeing there were different types of bondages and there were different types of methods that one can use to deal with them. And one part of the whole solution is looking inwards. And so to deal with desires is by looking inwards. Another thing that comes up, and again it's dealt with by looking inwards, is the whole question of attachments. And the first little jolly drama performed by the young people, that perhaps illustrated it very well. Attachment, you follow what I think you should do, not what you think you should do, and that sort of imposition. Now that state of attachment, when we call it love, we put in a very royal, beautiful package on it. But love is one thing, responsibility is another thing, and attachment is yet a third thing. And in our present state, we tend to confuse all three and label all three as one. Love is that in which I'm giving, important, not taking. And love isn't something that I can even say, I will give if you give me this in return. That's again back to your marketplace situation. That's not a giving. But love is that which I can freely give. Responsibility, yes, I have a commitment, I have a responsibility to any number of people around me, and to be able to fulfill that, I need to be actually a little bit detached. If I'm too emotionally caught up within a situation, it's not actually possible for me to properly fulfill my responsibility. But if I can step to one side for just a moment, and I can see what is needed, then I can step back in and fulfill that need more accurately. It's something that parents, for instance, find a little bit of a challenge. I won't say it's a problem, but it's definitely a challenge. There's a responsibility that's there, but yet, how do I do it absolutely in the right way? And the little thing to remember there is this idea of detachment. And when people hear this word detachment, it's perhaps one of the most misunderstood words within the whole spiritual vocabulary. There's quite a strong reaction to it, and I understand that. But detachment just means having that ability to step aside and look and then deal with it. That's one aspect of it. The third aspect, the attachment, ask yourself, is there any sorrow within this relationship? Is there any exchange of pain within this relationship? Whichever side it may be on, whether you think you're receiving pain or the other partner is complaining and is saying you're giving them pain. So whichever side it is, and whatever age level it may be through, whether it's parents and children or friends or whatever. But if within that relationship there is the feeling of sorrow on either side, then that to me is telling me that it's not love, it's attachment. Because within pure love, I can't accept that there should be any sorrow that's given and taken. If something has become a little bit polluted, then it's moved away from its pure original form, and it's become a little bit mucky, and it's really not right. Something needs to happen to clean it up again, and that's what's going on. Maybe it started as love, but carrying all the other stuff with it, becoming polluted, it's now come to the point where it isn't love anymore. And it's very difficult to acknowledge that, because we are so dependent on each other, dependent on other human beings. And again, a very interesting contrast to the cry for freedom that we always sing about. On the one side, freedom, and on the other side, so totally dependent. When you have half and half, and you multiply them together, what do you get? You don't get a whole, you get a quarter. And I am half a person. I feel that there's a state of being incomplete, that there's many factors missing out of my personality and experience. And I come to you, and you're also half a person, because you're also evolving, looking for fulfillment, satisfying your needs, and the two halves come together, and what happens? Just a lot of pain and suffering that's multiplied. And so that's the present state. And turning back inwards means that I learn how to complete my own personality and become a full person again. And when I become a full person, then there's no bondages anymore. Neither am I dependent on another, but equally, I won't create the situation in which others become dependent on me. It's a little bit a manifestation of our own ego. We enjoy the experience of being needed, of being wanted. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? And so we see that here's a situation arising in which another person is becoming dependent on me, and it gratifies us. Rather than raising warning bells in our heads, we feel, this is very good. Now finally somebody needs me. And we allow that situation to develop, not realizing that we're going to be suffocated by it, that it's not going to be possible for us to deal with it within a short space of time. If we deal with it fast and we take steps to remedy that situation, in a state of real love, I don't want another person dependent on me, because I don't know how long, whether it's because of this physical body or other circumstances, but I have no guarantee how long I can be with that person and fulfill whatever it is they're wanting. And so to allow the situation of somebody becoming dependent is not love. It's depriving them of their freedom again. But apart from making others dependent on me, perhaps the first step is the process of moving away from dependence myself. And again, how do I make myself self-sufficient? One of the other things that came up within this project. I'm sorry if I keep referring to it, but just imagine it's the largest research project that's ever been undertaken by a non-governmental organization. And so it's provided a huge amount of data that's really amazingly valuable. But all of the things that have come in have actually confirmed the things that I have understood from a spiritual dimension. And so the things that I had thought about and I had learned, well, it's wonderful that actual research has been able to verify them. Because when it's coming from a spiritual perspective, it's possible for somebody to say, well, that's what you think. But when it's research, research is the modern guru, the modern Bible. And so you have to accept it. And so one of the other things that's come in from this research has been this word self-reliance, self-fulfillment. That in people's vision of their better world, they saw people as being that. And obviously it meant on an external level also, in terms of self-reliant in your country, so that you have all the resources without having to depend on other countries. So on one level, people were talking about that, but on another level, people were talking about having your own inner resources and being able to draw upon them. And so coming to the state of being a full, complete person in which I am self-reliant, again, how do I do that? If my energy is expended outside and there's no way in which I'm looking inwards and fulfilling my needs inside, it's not going to be possible. And yet, just knowing myself and coming back to this seed that I am, and I'm able to find ways and means of making myself complete so that I'm not expecting that it's from you that there's going to be fulfillment, because that's going to lead to disappointment, as has been seen. And so one answer to, and I've just mentioned two problems, desires and attachments, but there's a whole long list of them. But the answer to both these things is just going inwards. For me, there's also been another very powerful method of becoming free. And that's been the relationship with one, the relationship with the Supreme. And now that's probably raising 1,000 questions in your mind. If I tell you that my understanding of the identity of the self is that I, the human being, there's the body, the human, but the being that I am, I consider myself to be a point of energy, just a spark of light. Strange? Look into the mirror, and what do you see? Sounds like E.T., doesn't it? But that's what you are, just an extraterrestrial being, actually. A point of light, the point of energy located here that's making this whole instrument function and work. And my understanding of the Supreme is also the same, a being of light, a spark of light that is the source of love, of truth, of peace, of purity, of power, all the different positive attributes. And developing a relationship with the Supreme has also been a very, very major factor in my own liberation. One of the main things that I've been able to let go through developing that relationship has been letting go of fear. Think of the thousands of fears that we have and how they inhibit you from doing something now. They prevent you from actually fulfilling yourself. The whole state of self-actualization, that becomes filled with such major obstacles because of our fears. And the relationship that one develops with the Supreme is one in which there's a true nurturance, because you're connecting up with the source and you're able to take whatever it is you need. And then in human terms, one can compare it to the relationship of a loving mother, or a caring father, or a very wise teacher. Whichever term you wish to use, it's possible to use these analogies because that's what they are, but you're able to link up and take from the source whatever there is within the source. It means that there are no empty spaces left within the soul. Even on a physical level, in a temporary way, if you think you're not going to be able to deal with something because you lack whatever the need is, there's going to be fear. But if you think you have access to whatever it is you need, your fear will be diminished. If you need power and you don't have power, if there's somebody big and powerful with you, then it helps. So in little things like this, one can see how even if one doesn't possess something, but if one has access, then one is able to manage. And in this relationship with the Supreme, there's the absolute guarantee that whatever I need, at whatever time it is I need it, even actually before my need, it is made available for me, it is there for me to use, to take. And I think that that's what's helped me deal with any fears that I had. And who knows what other things are going to come up in the future, and no doubt many things will. But at the present moment, I can't actually think of a situation that I would be afraid of. As I say, let's see what the future holds, but at the moment I can't visualize anything. And that's because, not that I was born like that, but I've come to this stage through the development of that connection and that relationship. And so whether it's personal fears through one's own weaknesses and limitations, or whether it's the fears that I have because of certain actions that I personally have performed, and I can feel that the repercussion of that is going to come back to me, or whether it's fears about the state of the world and the future of the world, one's able to deal with all of these things just simply through this development of this wonderful connection, and all of that is taken care of. I spoke of even the fear of the actions that I've done and the repercussions that are going to come back. Well, I'd like to link that up with another whole question that comes up, which ties us up in bondage, and that is the bondage of the past. And so the fear of my own actions that I've done in the past, but also generally everything to do with the past. How big is the millstone that I wear around my neck, which is related to all the things of the past? How often is it that I'm able to set aside the past, having learnt the lessons from the past, and just keep myself very open to whatever is happening at the present moment, and to respond to the present. Worth thinking about, and also worth checking yourself with. Within all these things of self-development and progress for the self, one of the things is that it's nobody else who can teach us these things. One can share experiences, but it's my own conscience that is my guru. The Brahma Kumaris don't have any other guru, you'll be pleased to know. But it's your own conscience that you have to develop and allow that to be your guide, your guru. But also, you yourself have to accept responsibility to be your own teacher. It's much softer to let somebody else be your teacher and let them carry the responsibility. Just as it's much easier to let somebody else be your guru and tell you what you should be doing, and then if it doesn't quite work out, tell them, well, it's his fault, much easier. But it's not actually the reality. Can't do that. Have to accept the reality. And the reality is that I am ultimately responsible for myself, whatever I think, whatever I do, whatever I'm creating. And so within this area of self-responsibility and self-development, learning to be my own teacher means asking myself a list of questions every day. So it's not another teacher who's going to set you homework to do, and you carry back your homework and they pat you on the head and offer you a good report, but it's yourself. You set yourself the questions, you check yourself through your homework, and the next day you check and see to what extent did I accomplish my homework. Does it sound too difficult? Not really, because I'm the one who has to live with myself and be at peace with myself and learn to love myself also. And so if all these things are so much related to me, learning to love myself and live with myself, it's also going to be me that checks myself. It's not going to be possible for somebody else to do my checking for me. It's natural. And so one of the other things that I have to check myself is to just check and see to what extent is it the past that's interfering in my present, and a very simple way of being able to check it. Just look into the mirror of your own mind and see, where do my thoughts go? When there's activity going on, that's fine, because usually then you have to stay focused here and now, and if you're wandering off into the past, the present falls apart and you see that happening, so maybe you remain focused then. But when you've got a moment to sit quietly, what happens then? Is it the past that's pulling? Is it the bitterness and the sorrow and the unhappy memories of the past? Or even, is it the future that's filled with worry and anxiety? And that's again, both things together creating this huge burden that you're trying to walk around with and still trying to be free. How is it possible? And so dealing with the past, and even the question of the actions that I myself have performed, there's a very interesting word that is part of our general vocabulary, but I'd like to use it in a very specific context. And it's an idea that's come up in Eastern and Western mystical thinking, but it's very relevant to our needs at the moment. And that is to think of the whole of life as a drama. A stage, actors playing their role, different scenes following through one from the next, and the whole of this human drama is based on our own actions. It's our own creation. It isn't even another director up there who's determined what the drama is. It's nobody else who's written our script for us and handed it to us and said, now this is what you have to say. But we're the actors in the drama, but we're also our own directors for the drama. We're also our own script writers for the drama. And so think of this drama, and the scene has finished. It belongs to the past. Now, I learn whatever I need to learn from it, and then I have to learn to let it go. I have to learn to say, that is the past, that is drama, and put a full stop to it. Because the next scene has come on, and if my mind is colored by the past scene, I'm not taking benefit from the present scene. And it applies not only to what happened yesterday, but the training that I'm still receiving teaches me that even if something happened an hour ago, in the space of that 1 hour, even if we had a difference of opinion an hour ago, and you come to me now, but if my vision is seeing you with what you said an hour ago, well, it might not be valid. Because even in that space of an hour, how many changes of heart have you been through? How many different moods have I been through? And so change has been happening just very, very fast, even in that space of time. And so I can't prejudge things at the present moment by what happened even an hour ago, let alone last year or 10 years ago. It just makes you realize how antiquated human beings are to judge things from 5 years, 10 years, a year ago. It's not real, it's not valid anymore. And yes, the actions that I performed and the fears that I have and the repercussions that are going to come through because of that, how do I deal with that? What I do now is to do that which is good. If there's a pair of scales, and in the olden days you used to have these old-fashioned scales and it had the center point in the middle and the two pans were there visible in front of you. Now they've got all sorts of modern systems to weigh things, but you had these old-fashioned things. If one side had something in it, but if you wanted to outbalance that, what you did was to put in something in the other pan. And so if there are actions that I know about that today I understand were not right, but rather than be afraid, rather than worry, rather than feel guilty, have to let go of all of that, let me focus on doing that which is good. And it's a sure guarantee that if my actions today are going to be good and powerful, then the power of that is going to outweigh whatever else it is I did in the past. And so I don't even have to carry the burden of that. I can really let go of the past and say, it's finished, it's gone. Because my present transformation will be more powerful and more important than anything else. There's one other final thing that I'd like to touch upon and then open up for questions, and that is the benefit of letting go. Talked about all the bad things that happen when you don't let go and how the spirit feels crushed and unhappy. Letting go means allowing myself to be free. Letting go means allowing whatever is positive within myself to have full expression. Letting go means having a relationship of lightness and love with my global family and the ones who are closest and nearest to me also. But perhaps at this moment within world history, I see that letting go means something else that's quite amazing and magical. It's a very special time in history that we are passing through now. A momentous time, a time in which we can be instruments of wonderful change, magnificent things. And it means letting go of our limited ideas of what is possible and what isn't possible, and allowing ourselves to be instruments of the divine. I see that each and every one of us has that potential. The power of the divine can work through every single one of us, but it means letting go of our ego and allowing the divine to work through the self. It's my own ego that blocks things, and so that supreme power, which is able to create a new world, isn't able to work through me. But as I let go of my ego, I'm able to open up and be a channel for that purity, that love, that power, that peace. And if we become instruments in this way, I can see us creating a better world very, very quickly. And so letting go means magic for myself in my life personally, but it means also we become instruments to create something better for the whole world. Thank you for your attention, and I'll be happy to try and answer your questions. Can I suggest that you come forward and ask your question, please? I only half heard your question because you were being drowned out by the noise of traffic, but I think I caught the essence and I'll repeat it. Just correct me if I haven't understood clearly. What about victims and children in difficult situations? How are they the directors or playwrights of their own drama? I'm going to answer your question with the understanding that I have, which takes in another concept which actually raises 1,000 more questions. But I feel that the only way that I can answer you is by sharing that information that I understand. And I don't believe that we have just one lifetime. I believe that the eternal spirit, the soul, has eternal life, and it has continuity, and it moves from the passage of one human birth into another human birth, and so on. And so, given the present circumstances and situations, there are so many things that I personally have done in the past which have created these present circumstances. And so, at this point now, that's not being defeatist, but it's saying to me, if I accept responsibility for what has happened, I can also be responsible for my own future, and I can start doing something about it. In the state of defeatism, I say, well, I don't know why this has happened, and there's nothing I can do about it. But in the state of self-reliance, I understand that whatever it is that has led me here, I don't know the specifics of that, but I accept the principle of responsibility. I don't blame God, I don't blame the universe, I don't blame you or my parents or my teachers or anyone else. It can't be that. There has to be justice within the universe, so blaming anyone else doesn't work. But if I can accept that responsibility, I also have the key to my future freedom and being able to do something about it, because then I accept that responsibility too.
Do you think that the great strides that have been made in our civilization, really people like Michael have philosophy,
did everybody hear the question? It was very clear. Okay, I'll repeat it. Do I think that the great creators of our time, the musicians, the artists, Beethoven, Michelangelo, etc., had the philosophy of letting go? Yes, absolutely. I know this for a fact because in various writings that have been attributed to great masters, whether in terms of painting or in terms of music, and these two areas I know about specifically, those individuals have actually written that it wasn't they that created this, but they felt that they were channels for the divine, that it was that divine energy that was working through them, to the point where, in real recognition of that, they didn't actually want to sign their own name to their works, because they recognized it was another creative force that was working through them. And so yes, the whole idea of creativity is only possible when I let go. Mhm. I think everybody must have heard that because I heard it, and he was right at the back. I agree that emotions and relationships go through different stages, and I think that it should be possible to come to that state of relationship in which there isn't a giving and taking of sorrow, just as I believe that the original and natural state of the human soul is purity and love and peace. This also is part of my personal philosophy, and I share that with you, and I understand that sometimes the process of learning can be a painful one, and so the process of learning and loving is also sometimes painful. I accept that. Maybe time for one last question. Oh. Ah.
Just now you mentioned that what you've done in the past you should forget. Because in the phase of being an hour or so, it can change. Now if one does not want to learn from the past, surely the Bible speaks of regret.
I think I mentioned it at least twice within my talk today, that when I'm dealing with the past, the first thing I have to do is to learn from the past. I think I specifically said that a couple of times. And then the bitterness and the sorrow I have to let go of. There's one last question here. The questions about, well, in essence, raising young children or young people, and where does punishment fit in within all of this? How do we teach? What happens about punishment? My personal feeling again is that if it's just punishment, retribution, it never actually teaches anything. There's just a great resentment that's built up. And in my own experience, whatever I've learned has been, if it's been taught with clear understanding and love. And so that's worked for me, and that's how I've been able to share these ideas with others also. If you punish, then it just builds up a hatred. But if there's a clear explanation, and what I found was that it's not many parents who can actually explain clearly to a young adult why they're telling them do this or don't do this. And if it's just simply the ego of parental authority, because I say and so you have to, it doesn't work like that. There has to be a different type of relationship. But if there's a clear explanation of why something is being asked for, then it works. Perhaps you'd like to experiment with this journey of turning inwards and this link with the Supreme. And we call that meditation, but it's not a meditation in which you cut yourself off from the world. It's a meditation which you can actually carry out as you walk, as you move, as you drive, as you do other things. But the process of getting into that meditative state is something that one needs to acquire. One needs to learn the technique for that. And so I'm going to ask Sister Maureen to actually conduct a meditation for us. And if you'd like to follow those ideas through with your own mind, you'll be able to then see how we use the mind to be able to find that inner peace and connection with the Supreme. You can sit as you are. Just find a position in which your body is comfortable, so that your body can remain still for a little while. If you want, you can keep your eyes open, because in fact we meditate with our eyes open, but if it's more comfortable for you to gently let your eyes shut and relax, that's also fine. But if you're keeping your eyes open, then the best thing to do is to just look straight ahead or look towards the person conducting meditation to the center of the forehead. Something eternal. Inside myself, I know that there is a wealth of experience that expands beyond my present existence. A part of me that I only think about sometimes. When I'm away from the noise and activity in my life. I can go within and find someone very special. I acknowledge all those good qualities
that I know are lying within me, somehow untapped, unexpressed. And I can express these qualities to one other source, the only other source who can see the depth of beauty that is really me. A source which knows me and understands me, like no other human being could. A source which can provide me with every relationship I'd ever dreamed of. A beautiful relationship. This source is the source of supreme beauty, of pure love, of absolute benevolence. And from this source I can take unlimited love and happiness. I simply clear my mind and open my thoughts to this source, and I find my being filled with all those things for which I really desire. Pure love, a deep peace, and freedom. I can express all these things to this one. And all these things become mine to keep.
even a few minutes each morning spent in discovering the self and discovering the link with the Supreme can enable you to let go of many things within just the space of some days. It really works as quickly as that. There's an immediate experience of tremendous power and liberation that comes. Thank you. Om Shanti.